Hey everyone, this is Pete, and today I want to share with you one of my favourite things in my collection. This is the Philips G7000 Videopac Computer, also known to Americans as the Magnavox Odyssey 2. This is a console that was released in 1978, and it was part of the second generation alongside the Atari VCS or 2600, the Intellivision, and a couple of other things as well. Now this system isn't particularly well known today because as we all know, the Atari 2600 in particular tends to dominate early days of retro discussion, with a touch of Intellivision here and there, because Intellivision is still on people's minds because of the Amico and stuff like that. But this is a really great little system as well. It's got a lot of charm to it, it's got some great games for it, and I just really like it. Now you'll notice a few things about it here. We've got a membrane keyboard on the front. This is because it was intended to be as much a computer as it was a games console. So the keyboard was here so that you could play educational games and type things in. There was even a cartridge that supposedly introduced you to basic programming as well. I've never actually tried that myself, I must confess. And I understand it's pretty limited in what you can do, but yeah, it was intended to sort of introduce people to the idea of using a computer as much as it was a game system. You'll notice there's no power button or anything on there. There is a power button on the American version, which is the Odyssey 2, but for some reason the European version, which is the Philips G7000 that we have here, there's no power button, so you just plug it in and it turns on straight away. There's a couple of variations of the system as well, mostly relating to these joysticks that you get with it. This model I've got here, these joysticks are hardwired into the back of the console. What that actually means is that the joystick ports are inside the console. So if you do have a problem like I have with this one, where this controller sticks, as you can see, it sticks over to one side. If you want to replace it with one that works a little bit better, you can actually just take the screws off the console, disconnect the joystick inside the console and replace it with the new one. So that's something I need to do at this point. But these controllers are pretty simple. They're just an 8-directional joystick. They feel like they should be analog, but they're actually not. It's got this sort of pudding stirrer action on the top and then an action button over there in the corner. So it's just a single button joystick. It's not the best joystick you'll ever use, but it's also not the worst either. It'll be familiar to people who've used things like, I think a Tandy joystick is a bit like that. So the G7000 made use of cartridges as its media, and these were distributed in a couple of different forms. There's firstly this kind here with the black labels on the front, and this kind here which have some artwork on the front. Now if you're in the States and you're looking at the Odyssey 2, you'll tend to find more universal artwork on the actual game systems, because there wasn't this sort of disparity between these blank boxes and these ones that actually gave you some indication of what was in there. So if you look at this first box here, Videopac number 1, as the games were referred to as, doesn't actually give you any indication anywhere of what's on that cartridge. It's just cartridge number 1. So presumably you were expected to look it up in a catalogue or something and find out what was in there. And the cartridge inside isn't much help either. It just says number 1 again. If you do look in the inlay, which doubles as a manual, you can get a little bit more information there. So if we have a look at what's inside the manual for this one, you probably can't read that with the light coming down. So I will read it to you. This Videopac is one of a whole range for use with the Philips Videopac Computer G7000. They provide entertainment, excitement and education for all the family. And then we scroll on here. We don't scroll, it's a book, isn't it? So yeah. So this cartridge has 3 games in it. It has Race, Spin Out and Cryptogram. So there's 3 games in this cartridge. It's a bit like Atari 2600 games had multiple game variations that you could switch between by pressing the game select switch. So too did the Philips G7000. And in this case, you didn't have to cycle round them with a game select switch. You just press one of the number keys or sometimes one of the letter keys. Now these cartridges are very popular with certain people for one very distinct reason, which is that they are lovely. to put in, clunk, and they've got a handle, which means that you can yank them out very easily. There's no eject mechanism or anything like that. It's just plug them in until they go clunk and pull them out with the handle. Simply lovely. Now the other game that I've got here is one of several I've got in my collection, which is Munchkin. We'll talk a little bit more about this when we come to play it, because this is one of the games I want to play today. But yeah, this is a good example of what the game boxes with artwork look like. So you'd have some actual artwork relating to the game itself. You still have the number, so it's sort of encouraging you to collect the whole set by numbering all of them. Then you've actually got the game name in several languages down here, and a screenshot over here. Again, there's nothing on the back, so if you want to know more about it, you have to actually take the manual out of the box. And again, you see the cartridge doesn't give you much indication of what's on there, but it does at least say the game name this time and tell you what buttons you can press. So in this case, you can see you can press reset and 0 to 9 to access the various different games available. And inside, again, you probably won't be able to tell too well with the lighting in here, but again, the actual layout of the manual is pretty similar. So you've got several different languages. Actually, this is a lot more comprehensive than the previous one. So you have a couple of pages of English in this one rather than several columns, all different languages. And then you have the other languages later in the manual as well. So yeah, I'm a big fan of this console. It's one that I've always been very fond of. It's one that I learned about long after I'd started gaming on the Atari 8-bit and various other systems. But it's one that I always enjoyed anytime we got out, because it was, unlike the Atari 8-bit computers that I grew up with, this was not something we had out and ready to play all the time. It's something that I had to specifically ask my parents to get out of the loft if we wanted to play on it. So I would ask them to do that every so often, just because I really enjoyed the games that were on here. They provided a different experience from anything else that I was used to at the time, and I really enjoyed them. And so I have some very, very fond memories of this system, having it brought out of the loft and put in the lounge or sometimes the dining room on an old portable television, and playing it on there. And yeah, this is the very same system I grew up with. This system actually still works. For the game footage today, we are going to be using emulation, because the 1970s era RF output of this is not terribly good quality and not brilliant for video capture. You've got a couple of options for emulation of this. There is an emulator called O2EM, which has been maintained since the late 90s, I think. But it still works fine on today's systems. That's very good. It's got a good front end as well. There is also a RetroArch core based on O2EM. At the time of recording, that provides reasonably accurate emulation in everything apart from sound. All of the sound is pitched up slightly from what it's supposed to be. So if you want a truly accurate experience, I recommend steering clear of the RetroArch core. Or finally, you can also use MAME to emulate the Videopac Computer or Magnavox Odyssey 2 as well. And that probably provides the most authentic, accurate experience at the moment. It's a bit of a faff to set up compared to O2EM or RetroArch, but it is a good way of experiencing the library of this system. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to switch over to the emulation screen as my cat meows outside the door. I don't know if you can hear that. And we're going to go and play 5 of my favourite games for the Philips G7000 Videopac Computer, also known as the Magnavox Odyssey 2. So let's go play. Okay, we begin our adventure at the screen you get when you turn on the Philips G7000, regardless of what game you've put in. It just says select game, or if you're playing one of the European systems, it will say select game in French, usually. And then you press one of the keys on the keyboard to choose what you want to play. Now, like we saw in the case of Munchkin, that's sometimes printed on the cartridge. Sometimes you'll need to look in the manual to see what button does what, and sometimes you'll just need to experiment. So the first game we're going to play is the famous Munchkin. Now, this came out in 1981, if I remember correctly, which got it into a lot of trouble because at that point Atari had already negotiated the rights to home versions of Pac-Man. And as you can see, this bears, at the very least, a passing resemblance to Pac-Man. It's not exactly the same as Pac-Man, as you may be able to notice, because the dots are moving and there's not many of them and there's only 3 ghosts. But there was still a substantial and very important court case over this game, determining exactly what could be copyrighted about a video game. Was it just the source code, or was it also the look and feel? Was it the graphics? Was it the actual game design? So yeah, this was a landmark game for a number of reasons. And just to add insult to injury, it's actually a lot better than the Atari 2600 version of Pac-Man that Atari was working on as well. So one suspects that may have been the real reason that Atari was so sniffy about the fact that this game came out before the 2600 port of Pac-Man. So this game is known as KC Munchkin in the States. That is apparently a reference to the head of Magnavox at the time, I think, whose name was KC, something that sounded a bit like Munchkin. I forget exactly what it was offhand, and I don't have anything to refer to while I'm playing, but yeah, that was supposedly the case. And KC Munchkin himself, or just the Munchkin, as he became known in the European version, became something of a mascot for the Philips G7000 as a result of these games. So yeah, although Munchkin is a relatively late numbered entry in the library of cartridges for the console, he's still very much associated with the platform. So yeah, a couple of things you'll notice about this. One of the most sort of iconic things about Videopac games in general was that high score display at the bottom. This is something that the 2600 didn't do. This is something that the Intellivision didn't even really do a lot. But yeah, a lot of arcade style games on the Philips G7000 had a high score facility where not only did it record your high score while the system was turned on, it didn't actually save it or anything. Not only did it record your high score for that particular session, but you could also type in your name or whatever you wanted, really, because you had a full alphanumeric keyboard, so you could type anything you wanted, as long as you had the best score, of course. Whoops. So there, my score, which is on the right, was 57, so I can't type anything new in because the high score is 96. There's a couple of interesting things about the actual design, structure and mechanics of Videopac games. One of the most notable things is that a lot of them, you only have one life. So like, whereas in Pac-Man you would have multiple lives with which to try and attain a high score, in Munchkin you just have one. And that was not at all unusual. Most arcade style games for the system, you only had one life, which gave them a very different feel, but worked very well in the context of score chasing. Because it means that there's none of the sort of restarting if you mess up right at the beginning or anything like that. If you mess up, you mess up and you just start again straight away. So I actually rather like that. And with the high score system in place, it also feels very much like you can sort of really see yourself improving in real time, which is cool. So the version we're playing at the moment is game number 1, which is just this fixed maze. It's the same every time. And you just have to eat all the munchies. And you'll see that this last munchie here actually moves at the same speed as you, so you have to cut it off rather than chasing it down. And as you continue to clear mazes, the game gradually accelerates and gets more difficult. Your scoring potential doesn't increase at all, I don't think, but it does get faster. And because the actual number of points you get for each action you take in the game is so low, you'll find that it feels very obvious when you're improving. Because there we've just gone up from like 90 points to 110 points. But that feels like a significant increase. So we'll have one more go at this mode, and then I'll show you some of the other things you can do with this game. Because not only is Munchkin a good version of Pac-Man, it's also got some really interesting and quite innovative features as well. I don't think we're going to survive much longer. Oh no, there we go. So yeah, this is, oh no, there we go. Alright, anyway, so we press the reset button and that takes us back to the select game screen. And then you press one of the other keys. So if we press 2, for example, we have a different maze. Alright, play through that one. Press 3, we have a different maze again. And you see this time, if you look in the middle, the box that the munchers, as the definitely not ghosts are called, come out of, it's actually a sort of turnstile in the middle now. So if you want to get to the other side of the maze, you've actually got to take a risk and go into that box in the middle. Like this. And move to one of the other sides. So this is quite an interesting variant. So let's have a go at this version. It's quite tricky, so I probably won't last very long, but you'll know. Well, there we go. That's how that one works. Number 4. Got quite wide open spaces in this one, so this is very interesting considering most Pac-Man clones tend to have single width mazes. This gives you a lot more, or at least it feels like you have a lot more room to move around and to dodge. Gives you a very different feel to what's going on. Ooh, get out of here. And again, you see, as you complete an individual maze by eating all 12 munchies, the speed gradually increases, and you just keep doing your thing. Alright, on to number 5. So this time, the maze is invisible while you're moving. So, we've mentioned a few times before about how Atari 2600 games like to have invisible modes. And this is sort of a reflection of that trend, really. Except the really interesting thing about this one is the way that it's only invisible while you're moving. So there's sort of a memory game aspect to it that I think is really fun. And again, it's a means of keeping the same mechanics of the game and making it feel remarkably different. Because not only have you got to navigate the maze to get the munchies, you've got to... Oops! You've got to be able to avoid the munchers as well. That was what, 5? 6 is another invisible one with a different maze. One of these is a randomizer. I can't remember which one it is. I'm sure we will figure it out. So it'll actually generate a completely random maze for you. That was 6. Now we have 7. Another different maze again, but with invisible walls while you're moving. You'll notice that there's dead ends in these mazes as well, which is something you tended not to get in Pac-Man. So you've really got to be careful about how you move, when you move, what you're doing in relation to the munchers, who definitely aren't ghosts. They're definitely not ghosts. Even though I don't know anyone who played this and didn't refer to them as ghosts. Because come on now. They knew what they were doing. Anyway, number 8. Got another turnstile in the middle of this one. So yeah, this is just the previous turnstile maze, but with the invisibility system. Oh, you see, the other way you can get from one side to the other is by using the warp tunnels at the side. So if we go out of this one, we'll actually end up in the top left corner, having gone from the bottom right corner. Oh no. Oh no, missed it. No! Is that 8? Down to 9 now. Again, I think 4 and 9 might be the randomizers. I'll have a check in a minute. Because I think that's why it sort of comes up with those wider mazes, because it's just randomizing where the walls are. And that means that sometimes it ends up with this situation where you have large areas with nothing in it. And then there's one final thing I want to show you about this as well. Once we've confirmed that this is the randomizer. So if we play 4 again, and then reset, and 4 again. Yeah, that is randomized. So modes 4 and 9 give you a random maze to play with. Now, mode 0... Not mode 0. What is... Oh, I don't know what the key is to get the mode I'm thinking of. That's awkward, isn't it? There is a maze editor. And I can't remember how you get to it. I thought it was 0. But it's not. So what is it? Ooh... M for maze? No. E for editor? No. C for create? No. Q, W, E, R, T, Y, U, I, O, P. There we are. P. Oh, that's it. P for program. That's right. Okay. So what you can do with this is you use the keyboard to type in a coordinate. So say A1, for example. Well, in fact, you use the numbers to sort of start with a predefined maze, and then you can type in these things here to actually choose between different options for that area. So you see, oops, that's the wrong button. So if I press A1 and then enter, you'll see that the top corner changes the way that it's laid out. So if I press B2 again, that's not working the way I thought. I'm going to be right back in just a moment, and I will tell you in a more authoritative sense how this actually works. So bear with me one moment. Right, so it's to do with what you press and also what order you put the coordinates in. So for example, if I press B4 and then press clear, which is mapped to backspace in MAME, that will get rid of a horizontal line in those coordinates. If I do B4 and press enter, that will add a horizontal line there. If I do B4 and then clear again, that will get rid of it. But if I do 4B and press enter, that will add a vertical line instead. So using that, if I then do C4 and enter, sorry, 4C and then enter, that puts a vertical line there. And if you do that again with clear, that will get rid of that vertical line. And using that, you can make your own mazes. And again, like the high scores, this doesn't this doesn't like save them or anything like that. But yeah, it does mean you can make your own maze. So if you've got friends over and you want to play this with them, then you can do exactly that. Anyway, we spent quite a while talking about just Munchkin for a while, and I've got a few more games that I want to talk about with you. So let's switch over to another one. I'll be right back. Okay, next up we have a game called Satellite Attack, which is often compared to Asteroids, but really is not very much like Asteroids at all. So in this game, you move this flying saucer around and you have to destroy these things that are floating around the screen. And you do that either by crashing into them with your shield or by shooting them. Now, there's a couple of interesting little mechanics in this. First of all, there's those flying saucers there which will shoot you. And again, we've got the high score system like we have in Munchkin, which is great. Secondly, you also notice that your shield takes a moment to regenerate. It appears as a grey circle first of all, and that gradually builds up to a blue circle. The grey bits are vulnerable, so you mustn't let things crash through those because they'll kill you. But if you hit something with the blue section of your shield, you'll destroy it. The other thing is that in order to shoot, you'll see the white dot in the shield moves around as you move. And what happens is the direction you push the joystick is the direction you want that to end up in. But if the white dot is not already pointing in that direction, it will move clockwise around the shield until it reaches the direction you're pointing. So here it's facing down. If I push right, it will keep rotating to the right until it reaches the right, at which point I can shoot in that direction. But while it's rotating, you can still shoot. And so it sort of becomes a multi-directional shooter in some ways, but not in the same way as something like Asteroids. It takes a little bit of getting used to figure out exactly how it works. But once you get used to it, you can pull off some really nice shots. And this game is so enjoyable and addictive. Absolutely great. Possibly my favourite on the system. Although it's a very close run thing with Munchkin, because Munchkin is great, but this is also great. You'll notice the visuals in this are very simplistic, and that's something that a lot of games for this system have in common, because the system did have some user-definable hardware sprites, of which the flying saucer that we're controlling is one of them. But for the most part, if you wanted moving objects on screen, you had to do them with text characters. But the G7000 had some interesting text handling things where basically built-in characters could be used almost like sprites. So you'll notice that these things that we're destroying, they're just X's and pluses alternating back and forth, but they're not moving by whole character. They're moving as if they were sprites. So they're moving by small fractions of the screen at a time. So that's one thing that the system could do that really set it apart from stuff like the 2600 and so on. Yes, it was a limitation in some ways because it meant that you had to rely on the built-in characters of the system to a certain extent, and you had to everything sort of ended up having a very similar look to each other. But that was quite good in a way, because it meant that the system had a very distinct sense of personality. You could tell a Videopac game by looking at it because of that distinctive font that was being used, because of the distinctive colour palette, and because of the way that these built-in characters were being used as sprites. And because at heart, Philips and Magnavox knew that this was a game system and not really a computer, a lot of those built-in characters were game related. So for example, there are some built-in characters for things like naval ships, spaceships, little men, that kind of thing. Whoops. Oh, those sources are so hard to deal with. They only shoot diagonally though. If you know that they only shoot diagonally, you can actually stay out of their path. One other thing you might notice is that when you destroy one of these things, it shoots out those 3 bits of debris, And if those debris hit another object, then it causes a chain reaction. So when the screen gets a lot busier later in a single playthrough, you can set off some really satisfying chain reactions. You see that some of them as well are changing from the cross and plus alternating to the cross, plus and a circle alternating, which makes it look like it's sort of spinning faster. That happens when two of the objects collide with each other, and those are worth a few more points. But they move a little bit more erratically. If you look, they sort of home in on you rather than just moving randomly across the screen. But they're worth more points. So in some ways it's in your interest to allow the garbage to build up on the screen so you can get some more points. At the same time, you also get a nice bundle of points for dealing with the saucer. But also the saucer's pretty likely to kill you, so... So unlike Munchkin, there aren't a bunch of different game modes to do in this one. This is it. This is the game. But that's fine, because it's a good game. It's a really fun game. Like I say, it's elegant in its simplicity. It's got that perfect arcade game feeling of just one more go. Just one more go. It'll be fine. Whoops. And that, I think, is one of the reasons that they put just the single life thing in most of their games. Because it made you just want to have another go at it. And yes, in some cases that meant that when you were getting started with a game, sometimes your games would be over very quickly with unsatisfyingly low scores, to say the least. It did mean that when you did manage to get yourself a higher score, it felt immensely satisfying. Chain reactions. We love them. Go away. That's it. You crash into the things. You don't get points for them if they crash into something, which is a bit of a shame. And you do get a lot of points if you can destroy them yourself. So no! It is worth trying to destroy the saucers yourself. It's just very difficult to do so because you've got to position yourself perfectly. You've generally got to use your shots rather than your shield. And in the meantime, they are shooting at you as well. So I tend to find my default approach to dealing with them is just blind panic, usually. No. Alright, one more go. One more go, then we'll move on to something else. See, the other thing to bear in mind with your shots is when you shoot, it resets the recharge of your... Oops. It resets the recharge of your shield as well. So you'll probably find that... yeah, a lot of the time it's best to try and rely on your shield rather than your shots. Because by shooting, you're making yourself very vulnerable. Not that matters when the saucer are around, because they can shoot right through your shields, but yeah, when you're just dealing with the stuff on the screen anyway, that's the way to handle it. I don't think you get extra points for the chain reactions, but it's just fun. It's just fun and satisfying. No, you go away. Oh, I didn't kill him, but he didn't kill me either. And that's important. Oh, I beat my high score. That's what we wanted. I love this game so much. It's so good. It may not look like much. It may look like teletext threw up on your screen, but I don't care. I don't care. It's just fun. It's a really good action game. And it's a really original take on the formula as well, which is my favourite thing about it. There's nothing quite like this. Asteroids, Space Invaders, Scramble, Galaxian, Galaga, all that sort of thing. Cloned to death. Satellite Attack? Nope, this is the only game I know of that's quite like this. Anyway, 112 points. That's as good a point as any to leave that there, I think. So, let's move on to another game. I'll be right back. Okay, next up we have another game that may not look like much to play, but it's one that we played a great deal back in the day. And this is one that my whole family used to really enjoy. So, I give you Flipper Game, which is virtual pinball of sorts. Oops. So yeah, in this game, all you do, you just hit the ball and you hit the coloured things and you get points and it's fun. It's pretty much the most abstract representation of pinball you will find. Even more abstract than Atari's video pinball on the Atari 2600. But we always really loved this game. Like I say, my whole family used to like this game. There's a multiplayer mode where you play one after the other, and you can compete for score. Or you can just play solo like I'm doing here. And the one thing Flipper liked to consider its unique selling point was the fact that you can move your flippers slightly left and right. In practice, it doesn't make a huge difference, but it does make a slight difference. In that if the ball is looking like it's going to drain, in some cases you can just move the flipper slightly and prevent that from happening. But yeah, this is all there is to the game. There's a bunch of drop targets at the top. There's that spinner thing in the middle, which builds up the bonus on the right, which then gets added to your score when you drain the ball. There's the little bat things that just get in the way, basically. And the coloured blocks, which just change colour when you hit them. They're just bumpers. So it's super simple. Doesn't have anywhere near the depth of like a modern pinball game or even an actual pinball table from back in the day. But it's a fun video game. It's simple, it's easy to understand, it's very accessible, which I think is why my whole family got on with it. Because out of my family, it was me and my brother who were the people who were the video game enthusiasts. My mum and my dad both had an interest to a certain degree. But really it was mostly me and my brother who played them primarily. But because this is so easy to understand and so relatable to a real world concept, in this case pinball, yeah, this is great for anyone to play. Whoops. Not easy though, as you can see. But yeah, once you get used to the quote-unquote physics, you can actually you can keep the ball going for quite a long time, and it's a lot of fun. The sound effects you hear in this, I've talked in other videos I've made about how I sort of deeply associate particular sound effects with a particular time in my life, because they relate specifically to the games I was playing at that time. This game, I think, is the most quintessentially sounding Videopac game there is. Like, pretty much every sound this system is capable of making is heard in this game at one point or another. And like I say, it's another one that might not look like much at first glance, but you play it and you'll understand. You'll understand. It's got that simple score chasing appeal of make numbers get big but feel happy. Which is what you want from a simple, straightforward pick up and play video game. Which was this system's bread and butter. Okay, we'll finish this round and then we will look at something else. So 2 more balls to go. Balls. Balls. Whoops. 1 more ball. That beeping, you can hear that, is sort of you setting the power of the plunger at the beginning. Right, so that was Flipper game. Big fan of that one. Like I say, not one of the most impressive games on the system. Not that anything on this system is particularly impressive anyway, but yeah, it's one you should give a go just because it's enjoyable to play. So let's switch over to something else. I'll be right back. Okay, next up we have Pickaxe Pete, which is actually one I didn't play back in the day, but one I learned about through Classic Game Room. Who was quite a fan of this system in its American format. And yeah, this is actually one of the few games for the system that I've picked up in more recent years. So I've got an actual box copy of this. This is a very simple platform game in which your aim is just to score points. That's all you have to do. And the way you score points is by hitting those bouncing rocks with your pickaxe. Now your pickaxe doesn't last forever, unfortunately. So when you do not have a pickaxe, you have to wait for another one to appear. Or for this key to appear. And then disappear again before you can reach it. But yeah, you got to be careful because you can't damage any of the rocks while you don't have a pickaxe. There's one. So let's go get that. And then we can get hammering again. You hammer with a pickaxe? I guess you pick with a pickaxe, don't you? So yeah, you'll see as you play, these ladders are appearing all over the place that you can climb up to get towards the top, which is where those keys appear. Oh, I'm dead again. And again, we have the obligatory... Oops. Yep. We have the obligatory high score recording system in this one. There's the key. How do we get to the key before the... We don't. Is the answer to that. So yeah, this one takes a little bit of getting used to because it feels like there should be more to it almost, but there isn't. But that's fine because it's fun. But you do need to get the hang of moving around, retrieving the pickaxe, avoiding the things. Can I get to that? Oh no, I can't because the ladders aren't there. So yeah, once you get the key, you can go through one of the doors, and that gives you a bunch of bonus points if I remember correctly. And you'll see that when you press the fire button, you can either jump or you can sort of duck and slide along. And which one you do depends on which direction you press as you press the fire button. So fire button by itself does the little hop like that. Except also sometimes it seems to do the duck as well, so I'm not entirely sure what determines that. Generally speaking, if you push up while you press the fire button, you will do a jump. We got the key! Then we go through the door and we get a bunch of bonus points and a sort of cutscene. So yeah, it's worth trying to get that key because look how many points I got for it. Like, I've outstripped my high score already just by going through the door once. So I guess to a certain extent what you want to try and do is stay towards the top of the screen as long as you've got the pickaxe. And get the key whenever possible. But the key does disappear very quickly, so... Oh, no, it's back. Just as I fall down. Pete. Pickaxe Pete, if you will. But yeah, this is a weird game. But once you get your head around the mechanics, which does take a little while, I will admit, it's a lot of fun. Because it's a fun take on the sort of single screen platformer. Oh, I just missed. It's a fun take on the sort of single screen platformer formula. That works quite well, I think. And again, it's making nice use of the... Oh no, duck. Oh, I can't believe I got away with that. Yeah, it makes nice use of the system's capabilities to represent its graphics. You'll see that most of the things on here, they aren't custom sprites. The only custom sprites are Pete, the ladders, and the pickaxe. Everything else is done with text characters. So like the doors are a coloured square and then the letter I. And alternating between those quickly makes it look like they're spinning round. Well, the key will be a custom one as well. But yeah, this game's just a great example of how you can do a lot with very little. Give me a key. Come on. Give me a key. Oh, it's hard. It's very hard, this game. But let's do our best. Bloody ladder. Trying to work out if there's any logic to where those ladders are appearing. To begin with, it looks like they're on the level that you're on, but as you move up and down the screen, it seems they sort of start appearing and appearing on levels sequentially. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Alright, one last go, then we'll move on to our final game for today. Alright, climb, 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 climb. Ready for key action. Smash. Smash. Oh, there's a key. There's a key. Let me over there. Let me over there. Let me over there. There we go. Points for me. Now, can we pull that off again? Is the question. Smashy, smashy. I'm going to run out of pickaxe. I've run out of pickaxe. There's a... Oh no! Oh, I exactly equaled my previous score. Anyway, that is Pickaxe Pete. definitely one of the best games on this system. One of the most original games on this system as well. Like I say, it takes a bit of getting used to, but once you do, great fun. All right, let's move on to our final game for today. I'll be right back. Okay, last of all then, we're going to play Freedom Fighters, which is a very simple game, just like everything else on this system. But it's a fun shoot 'em up with some really nice ideas and a pretty monstrous level of difficulty. Again, like most of the games on this system. See, dead with no points. So your aim in this game is to shoot the stuff. Specifically, your aim is to shoot the white things. Oops. I'm having a lot of trouble with this today. Your aim is to shoot the white things. And the yellow things that are producing the white things. Now what you can also do is you can collect these purple things, which are humans who are caught in, like, they're caught in weird crystals or something like that, I think is the official story justification of it. But they're worth loads of points, so you want to get them. Now you'll see a few interesting considerations while you are playing this. Whenever you move, the screen's sort of scrolling slightly as well, and that includes when you move up and down. So if you look, when you move up and down, your ship is thrusting in the direction it's facing. So even if you're just moving up and down the screen, you can't really just sort of hover and move up and down like you can in something like Defender. You're actually scrolling left and right on the screen. You want to really try and take that into account while you're moving, which takes a fair bit of getting used to, as you can see. Oops. Oh, terrible at this. But yeah, that does mean you can also sort of keep moving to get out of the way of things that are being shot at you, which can be very helpful. And you can change direction, and you can kill yourself. Right, so let's just take our time. Very, very careful. Shoot the thing. No, dead again. Oops, shot a human. That's fine. He was probably dead anyway. That's the stuff. Just be careful. Take out things from a distance. You don't need to. There's no need to get too close. If it's dangerous, it's dangerous. So stay out of the way of danger. Come here, human friend. Oh, dead. You know, I'm not sure I remember the scrolling element of this. So I'm just gonna go and look this up for a moment, because this is playing slightly different to how I remember. But maybe it's just that I'd never really noticed the way it played before. So bear with me, I'll be right back. Okay, so here's an interesting thing I never knew about this game. The way it plays is different depending on which controller you're using. So, the version we were playing a moment ago, with the sort of scrolling screen, that's what happens if you use one controller. And what we've got here, where you can move around the screen, That's what happens if you use the other controller. I never knew that. It does actually say it in the manual, just so you see how, how I apparently haven't read the manual for this properly. But yeah, this mode here, where you can move around the screen rather than scrolling, is probably easier. You've still got a slightly awkward element of, it takes a lot of space to turn around. Is something you have to be quite careful of. It's also very hard to rescue the humans in this mode, because they sort of pop in from the side of the screen. And yeah, it can be hard to reach them sometimes. But generally speaking, it's much easier to dodge the enemy things and shoot down the space mines that they're shooting at you as well. So yeah, it's quite interesting that that's two game variations based on the controller that you're using, not which variation you chose by pressing the game selector. That's something I never knew about this. That's very interesting. But anyway, as you can see, this is a fairly simple and straightforward shoot 'em up at heart. Whichever way you're playing, you just shoot stuff. And you occasionally collect stuff, but mostly you shoot stuff. And as with most of the other arcade-style Videopac games, you just survive as long as you can, try and get a high score, put in the rude word as your name, and repeat the process until dead. Now supposedly, if you play this with both controllers at the same time, you can sort of... that's like another way to play again. Apparently you move faster if you do that way. So that's something else to try if you give this game a go for yourself as well. But yeah, anyway, this is Freedom Fighters. We'll have one more go at this, and then we will wrap up for today, because we've been going for nearly an hour. I didn't expect this to take so long. These games are so simple, but somehow they're just incredibly compelling. And hopefully you can see why. So as I say, if you're someone who's like, ooh, graphics, then they're not going to do much for you. But if you want simple, straightforward, solid gameplay that in most cases has remained nicely timeless, in some cases I'd argue even better than some Atari 2600 games, then yeah, you should very much check out the Philips G7000 or the Odyssey 2, whatever you want to call it. As I say, it's always been a favourite system of mine ever since I was a kid, and it's quite genuinely one of my favourite things that I own. It's just a shame it's a bit of a pain to get a decent quality picture out of it onto the television I've got, which I think that may be as much the television to blame as it is the system itself. Because I've got an Atari 2600 as well, and the picture quality from that is much better. But there are ways to mod them as well. And the French models had SCART, but I don't know if it's a kind of SCART that would work with UK televisions, PAL televisions, because I know the French CCAM standard is a little bit different to PAL in a few ways, but might be something worth exploring if you want to get the best quality picture without using emulation like we've been doing today. Whoops! Okay, there we go. So I think that's enough of that for today. Hopefully that's given you a good overview of why the Philips G7000 Videopac Computer is a worthwhile system to explore, and why these games are worth checking out. So for now, it just remains for me to say, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.